Hello and welcome to Veterans Medals Workshop, where today we're going to talk about the military medals of America, or the military medals of the United States Armed Forces. Originally, back in the early 90s, the first of the books that was best explained all of the military medals of the armed forces, their criteria, design, and how to find out all about them, came out as the Complete Guide to U.S. Military Medals, 1939 to 1994. It's almost 25 years ago. That book sold out, and it was replaced by the next volume, A Complete Guide to All U.S. Military Medals, and that book also sold out. And then the fourth edition, the fifth edition, finally the sixth edition, even larger and more detailed, it also sold out at like 50,000 copies. And it was finally followed by the seventh edition, and then the eighth edition, the Military Medals of the United States. But this book also sold out in both hardback and softback. But the good news is we have a brand new book out, The Military Medals of America, and it's over 200 pages in all color, printed right here in South Carolina, and it covers every award from the Revolution, beginning with the first awards, George Washington's Badge of Military Merit, the Andre Medal, the Congressional Medals, and moves all the way up to the medals awarded today in the year 2020. So what I'd like to do now is walk you through this new book, The Military Medals of America, which comes in both hardback and softback. So we're going to take a high-speed illustrated tour of all the medals of the armed forces since the beginning. And additionally, we're going to see how to identify the medals a veteran has earned from World War II to present, how to obtain those veterans medals, how to display a veterans medals, how active duty and veterans would wear their medals, and complete ribbon charts for all of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and surprise of surprises, even the Merchant Marines. There's an old saying that you have to know where you've been before you know where you're going, and that's true in understanding military decorations and awards. While the beginning of military awards can be traced to the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks, it was the Roman legions who first organized an award system honoring their soldiers for bravery and service, and even today we can trace much of the symbolism of our awards back to the early days of the Roman legions. The introduction also shows how ancient symbolisms of the Greeks and Romans influences the design all the way up to today's Medal of Honor. During the Revolution, Congress authorized 11 gold and silver medals for service, and the first one went to General Washington for liberating and raising the siege of Boston in 1776. Other key awards of the Revolutionary War period were the Fidelity Medal or the Andre Medal, the Badge of Military Merit, which General Washington first authorized in 1782 and later became the Purple Heart, and the Order of Cincinnati, which the Continental officers formed a society to award themselves this medal. The overview continues through the War of 1812 and the various military awards to include, for example, during the Mexican War, some of the beautiful state medals awarded. There's an overview of both Union and Confederate Civil War medals, and when you get to medals like the Indian Campaign Medal, they're beautiful numbered examples. To the Civil War, there was an absolute explosion of military society medals such as the Grand Army of the Republic, and some of the veterans could design their own medals that exceeded the jewel orders of Europe. World War I saw the establishment of the Distinguished Service Medal and the Distinguished Service Cross, along with a campaign medal with bars and thousands of state and city commemorative medals. World War II saw the establishment of 3 campaign medals for the various theaters and other service medals and a victory medal, but the real story was none of these medals were available until well after the war. There's a good review of the service medals authorized for the Korean War and points out the fact that some of them were not authorized till 50 years after the war, along with an overview of the medals awarded for Vietnam and some of the Vietnamese medals commonly awarded to American troops. The historical overview looks at the Gulf War, the NATO medals presented, and then winds up looking at the global war on terrorism and the liberation of Afghanistan and Iraq. There's a very nice introductory spread on the types of military medals, ribbons, and devices. It shows you the difference between a decoration and a service medal and all the variations of a service medal, full size, miniature, and how they come in different cases in their certificates. And then we get to a very interesting section that talks about how to determine a veteran's military medals starting in World War II and moving forward. There's a great section that tells veterans and families how to claim medals from the government or replacement medals to include the exact addresses of where you go. This is one of the most unique and interesting parts of the entire book because it shows an actual veteran's DD-214, his discharge at the end of World War II, and how to read it to determine the awards he received. He would have come home with the 4 ribbons shown at the top of the screen, but in actuality, he's authorized with 6 medals shown below the ribbons. This section continues to explain the actual medals that should be authorized to every World War II Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine veteran, as well as for the Korean campaign, the Vietnam campaign, Cold War, Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, Kosovo, and ends up with a real code-breaking list of all the abbreviations you find on discharges for awards. And then you enter the most visually exciting part of the book, where you get to see actual examples of veterans' display cases, starting with the Army in World War II, then looking at Korea, the Cold War, Vietnam displays with examples on how you mount the display cases and what goes in them, Desert Storm, Army veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq, and how you display medals, ribbons, miniatures, followed by a section of U.S. Navy displays of actual veterans' medals from World War II, the Korean War, Navy Cold War veterans displays, and then displays from Vietnam service and Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Iraq, and the War on Terror. And that's followed by U.S. Marine Corps display examples. There's a great shot there of Big Jim Pierce, who at 93 decided to get his medals mounted for service in Guadalcanal and Okinawa, as well as examples of other Marine awards during World War II. Then Marine Corps displays, actual displays from the Korean War and Vietnam, the liberation of Kuwait, Afghanistan, and the War on Terror, and a really nice example on how a display case tells the story of a veteran's service to our country. The Air Force suffered casualties second only to the infantry in World War II, and here are some actual examples of World War II Army Air Force veterans medals displayed, to include one of the prisoner of war. It's really impressive. Actual veterans displays from service in the Korean War, and to include even a Medal of Honor winner display from the Vietnam War, and service in the Air Force in Southwest Asia, Gulf War displays, and of course some really handsome displays of Coast Guard service in both World War II, Vietnam, and Korea, and surprise of surprise, examples of United States Merchant Marine medals and displays. That's followed by a really neat section that tells how veterans, retirees, and former service members can wear their military awards and when they can wear the uniform. And then there's a neat section that tells you how to wear the ribbons and medals on Army uniforms, Air Force uniforms, Navy uniforms, and Marine uniforms. And then there's a short introduction on how to use the rest of the book. And it starts off with what's really the Rosetta Stone of the Code Breaker, a list of every ribbon that the United States has authorized since the beginning. This is followed by ribbon charts for each one of the services. For example, if you want to find out what these Army ribbons are, you can go right to the chart. And not only will it tell you ribbon by ribbon, but it'll show them to you in the correct order and with the attachments. The same thing for the Navy. All the Navy ribbons are shown in correct order from World War II to today, and so you take a Navy ribbon rack and you can go right to the ribbon chart and identify every ribbon and the attachment that goes with it. There's one for the Marine Corps, and you just simply take a Marine Corps set of ribbons. and use the chart to identify them and make sure they're in the correct order and whatever attachment will go with them. Of course, there's a United States Air Force ribbon chart, which lets you see all of the ribbons in the correct order. And over on the right-hand side is a list of all of the possible ribbons you can wear in the Air Force, even from other services. And this lets you clearly identify the ribbons and the attachments that go with it. And then there's a United States Coast Guard ribbon chart that lets you identify all of the different Coast Guard ribbons from World War II to today. So not only can you take a ribbon rack from the Coast Guard, it'll let you identify each one of the ribbons by name and the attachment that goes with it. Special examples for the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard for how you wear ribbon-only awards when they're worn with full-size medals, and then all of the United Nations medals, as well as the Merchant Marine medals. And then this incredible chart on the Armed Forces ribbon devices that show you every device that goes on or is used by the Armed Forces of the United States, to include the brand new C and R devices for combat and remote, as well as how you use every other device in the United States Armed Forces. And then we get to the meat and potatoes of the book, and we start with the older medals. For example, here is the first Navy Good Conduct Medal, and we go directly to the Civil War Campaign medals, to include the rarest of the rare medals, the Marine Corps Civil War Campaign Medal. Wars followed then by, in chronological order, the campaign medals, starting with the Indian campaign and the Cuban campaigns, the Mexican service, up to the World War I Victory Medal with all of its attachments. And here the book enters the modern-day Armed Forces Pyramid of Honor, taking a look at the 3 Medal of Honors for the Army, the Naval Forces, and the Air Force. And for example, for the Army Medal of Honor, it's shown in all the historical detail up to today's latest Medal of Honor, and it does the same for the Navy. And it shows the rare examples, for example, of the Tiffany Cross. And then today, the rarest of all Medal of Honors, the Air Force Medal of Honor, is shown, and then it gets into the Distinguished Service Crosses. Example of 1918, the earliest one. It shows the Distinguished Service Medals of the various forces. And each medal has a very nice summary that lets you go directly to it to see when it was, what the criteria was and when it was instituted. At this point, I'm just going to show you some examples of the other medals. For example, the Gold Life-Saving Medal is the original 1874 medal compared to today's issue of the Gold Life-Saving Medal. Details on the Bronze Star, especially like on the Purple Heart, showing examples of the engraved ones. You get to the Air Medal, it shows you all the complex attachments. When you get to the Accommodation Medal, it shows you all the latest attachments and when things are authorized and not authorized any longer. For example, the V device disappeared in 2016. On the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. Then as the book gets into the World War II medals, it shows you all the details and attachments of them. And for example, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, all the campaigns are listed. Same thing for the European, African, Middle East Campaign Medal, and the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal. All of the designated campaigns for the Army and Naval Service and Air Force are shown on the Vietnam Medal. Beautiful examples for service in Afghanistan. Same thing for the Iraqi campaign, and the latest medal, the Inherent Resolve Medal, is shown. And you get the Global War on Terror Expeditionary Medal and Training Service Medals. The Korean Defense Service Medal shows both examples, the new and old one. And then ribbon-only awards are also fully described, including their attachments. And a medal that sometimes causes confusion is the Armed Forces Reserve Medal, because it actually has 6 different backs to it depending on which service it is awarded to. A real bonus feature is a section on commonly awarded foreign medals. And here, for example, is the Croix de Guerre, awarded in both World War I and World War II to American veterans. And it's followed up by another section on commonly awarded Vietnamese decorations, such as the Republic of Vietnam Civil Actions Medal. And then we have a full description of all the United Nations military medals and ribbons authorized members of the American Armed Forces. And then the ever-confusing NATO medals and Article 5, non-Article 5, etc., UN Observer medals, and finally the last of the Foreign Service medals, the Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, the Kuwaiti Liberation Medal from Saudi Arabia, the Kuwait Liberation Medal, and the Republic of Korea War Service Medal. You're probably saying, wow, that's the last of the medals because it's the foreign ones, but not so. There's the marksmanship medals for the Navy and the Coast Guard that are still authorized, and they come at the very tail end of the order of precedence. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed our review of the Military Medals of America. It's America's latest book. It covers all of the decorations of the United States Armed Forces, all of its medals, service medals, and insignia. And if you've enjoyed the show, please give us a like. We always appreciate that. I always appreciate it if you subscribe. And I love it even better if you buy one of our books. I think you'll find it a great investment and a wonderful addition to your library.